7 p.m. The October meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors will come to order. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. The clerk has taken roll, and at this time I would ask Supervisor Kimball to come forward for the invocation and ask the body to remain standing afterwards for our pledge of allegiance.
We meet this evening to serve our community and conduct the business of county government. As elected officials, we've pledged to improve the quality of our communities, and as members of this board, we've been entrusted to do so. As we meet, we should be reminded that although we have our differences, we are linked by a common humanity. When we work together, our community moves forward in a spirit of mutual respect and common decency. We showcased what is best about our county, our state, and our nation when we act as such. So Lord, we ask your guidance as we strive to use our resources wisely, to represent all members of our community fairly, to be open to ideas of others, to be patient, kind, and civil in our discourse, to seek compromise, compassion, and collaboration. And working together, may we find common ground and a shared vision in such noble causes. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Kimball. Reading of the September minutes. We have a motion and a second on the approval of the September minutes. Are there any additions, corrections, or subtractions from those minutes? See none, all in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Thank you. We have one excusal this evening, Supervisor Holbrook. We have a resignation to vote on. That is the resignation for Supervisor Zaleski from District 4. I would entertain a motion to accept that resignation. On your pads, please. Is there a second? There is a motion and second on the floor to accept the resignation of Supervisor Zaleski. We can do that by a voice vote without objection. All in favor? Is there any discussion on the motion? See none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you. Appointments and reappointments. We have one appointment this evening, Aging and Disability Resource Center of Central Wisconsin Advisory Committee, the appointment of Dr. Kathleen Meyer to that committee. We have a motion and second on the floor to accept that appointment. Is there any discussion regarding that appointment? Seeing none, we can do that also by voice vote without objection. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you. Public comments at this time. Seeing that we have a large crowd this evening, most likely here for the same purpose, I would ask that if you can consolidate your comments to a minimum of people if possible, rather than having you all speak. We would appreciate that. We do reserve the right to stop public comment if it becomes redundant or protracted. Anyone speaking will be on a 3-minute timer. It will be in front of you, and we ask that you please identify yourself when you come to the microphone. Is there anyone here that wishes to make public comment at this time? Please come forward, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jamie Benoit. I am here today to oppose the resolution requesting the Wisconsin legislature remove the personal conviction waiver to the vaccination requirements for school. The personal exemption protects a parent's right of conscience, particularly as it pertains to bodily integrity and the right to informed consent to medical risk-taking. Wisconsin Department of Health Services data shows that over the past decade, a consistent 90 to 92% of students have been fully vaccinated. Among the tiny 5% of students who utilize an exemption, the vast majority do so in order to delay or skip vaccines or doses. That 5% statistic consists of individuals who perhaps just opt out of one vaccine. Most are not opting out of all, although that too is their right of conscience, as vaccination is a medical procedure with risk. For instance, under current law, Wisconsin kindergartners must either show proof of having received 3 doses of the hepatitis B vaccine or file an exemption. This vaccine targets a bloodborne pathogen most frequently spread by engaging in risky behaviors such as illegal IV drug use and prostitution. These activities do not occur in school settings, especially not at age 4. And so my family and many others opt for the personal exemption. Since the creation of the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, a law that A, acknowledges vaccine injury, and B, grants vaccine makers a get-out-of-jail-free card when it comes to said injury, the recommended vaccine schedule has significantly increased. In 1983, children of my generation received 23 doses of 7 vaccines by age 6. Now, the CDC recommends that all children receive 50 doses of 14 vaccines between birth and age 6. And so we are here today to protect the right to decline any future vaccines which may be added to the growing number of required shots for school entry. If our personal exemption is removed, we may be unable to exempt our children from the HPV vaccine, which targets a sexually transmitted virus not transmittable in a school setting. We cannot predict the future, so we don't know whether our legislature will someday approve legislation requiring this vaccine for all school children, as other states have done. Our personal conviction waiver protects our right to decide what is best for our children. Vaccine injury is real, and consequently for many families, the benefits do not always outweigh the risks. We are here tonight to ask that you respect our rights as parents to make healthcare choices that we believe, that we know to be in the best interest of our children. Thank you.
We'll maintain civil discourse and the outbursts will be dealt with appropriately. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Tara Zacher. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Psychology and Human Development from UWGB. I began my journey 13 years ago while pregnant with my first child. Since then, I've helped in leadership roles within 2 Wisconsin state advocacy groups in the health freedom and vaccine choice movement. I've spent countless hours of science-based research, and it has led me to continue to spread the message of vaccine choice and informed consent. Please stand up if you are here tonight to ask that your county board supervisor vote no on supporting legislation to remove our personal conviction vaccine exemption. Or raise your hand. Supervisors, take note of those here against this resolution. According to the Wisconsin DHS, only 1.1% of students had waived all immunizations in the 2018-19 school year. If you are considering supporting the removal of one of the 3 exemptions, have any of you actually sat down and talked with a family who utilizes one of the exemptions, specifically the personal conviction exemption? If you have not, I implore you to vote no, at least until you have more time to look into this issue. Many individuals seem to be under the impression that the personal conviction exemption is not important, as Wisconsin would still have the religious and medical exemptions. This is quite untrue. It is incredibly important that we protect the personal conviction exemption. In 2015, California passed SB 277, which removed the personal belief exemption in California, leaving California families with medical exemptions as the only means to opt out of vaccinating for school. In September 2019, California Senate Bill 276 passed, which restricted medical exemptions. In July 2019, New York passed the Senate Bill S2994A, which removed religious belief exemptions, leaving only the medical vaccine exemptions for New York families, which is impossible to obtain. 26,000 healthy children were consequently kicked out of school for using a religious vaccine exemption. Also in July 2019, the state of Maine passed LD 798, which removed the personal and religious vaccine exemptions. We know from looking at other states that if the personal conviction exemption is removed, further restrictions on the other 2 vaccine exemptions will likely occur. Recently, Hawaii added the HPV vaccine to their required schedule. And this means that if Hawaii were to lose its religious exemption, parents would be required to give their child the HPV shot in order to attend school. One state, Connecticut, requires influenza vaccine for school, a vaccine that's shown to be repeatedly ineffective and comes with very severe risks, including Guillain-Barré syndrome. Contrary to what mainstream healthcare would like us to believe, There's more than just one kind of medicine. It's likely that many people on this board ascribe to varying degrees of allopathic, osteopathic, chiropractic, homeopathic, and naturopathic medicine. We take the health of our families very seriously. We do not always believe that the mainstream medical professionals know what is best for us or for our families. We do not necessarily subscribe to the idea that health can only be achieved in the form of a pill or a vaccine. The health of our families is not one size fits all. And our parental rights, our bodily autonomy, and our freedom to choose what is right for our own families must remain. Please vote no.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to respectfully request that all of those people that stood up, that they would only stand up if they were Wood County residents. I'd like to see how many Wood County residents we actually have.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Ed Belongia. I'm a physician and I'm a researcher. I did my training in internal medicine in Madison, but for the past 20 years I've been doing mostly vaccine research here at the Marshall Clinic Institute. I've been involved in both vaccine safety and vaccine effectiveness studies over the past 20 years. Most of my research is funded by the U.S. government, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Some of it has been funded by industry. Throughout my research, I've had a chance to see how vaccines are regulated, how the process they have to go through for approval, and the sort of scrutiny they undergo after they're licensed to ensure their safety. I want to make 4 points in the next 2 minutes and 12 seconds. First, the U.S. has a strong and rigorous system to ensure that vaccines are safe. Vaccines undergo testing in animals before they are tested ever in humans. And then there's a long, long process of testing in humans, beginning with small studies to ensure safety and larger studies. At every step of the way, the priority is safety and then efficacy, but safety first. Then this has to be reviewed and meet the criteria of the FDA, and then eventually, if it meets the standards, the vaccine is licensed. After licensure, there are additional steps to ensure safety. There's the vaccine adverse event reporting system. That's at least an early warning system. It doesn't give us proof. Then the vaccine safety data link is another system. The Marshall Clinic is part of that. I've been part of that for the past 20 years, approximately. The vaccine safety data link is led by scientists and public health professionals with a high degree of expertise and a high degree of integrity. They are committed to serving the public interest. My second point, vaccines protect not only the vaccinated child, but also the entire community. I'm a parent of 2 children. They're now adults. I'm all for parental rights, but I'm also for community responsibility. Vaccines don't only protect your child, they protect everybody in the community too. That's from the concept of herd immunity or community immunity. When many children are vaccinated, the majority, then even those children who don't respond to the vaccine are protected as well, or the children who are too young to get the vaccine. So when vaccine coverage is high, everyone is protected. Third point, the U.S. is experiencing a resurgence in measles due to low vaccine coverage. In around 1990, the U.S. had the worst measles outbreak with 55,000 cases and 166 deaths. This year, we are hitting the record close to numbers that we saw back then. And as a result, we are having a resurgence of measles, and in fact, we were at risk of losing our status of having measles transmission eliminated in the U.S. So what can we do about that? Well, we have unvaccinated populations where vaccine coverage is low, and that's the tinder that fuels the outbreak fires. We need to bring it up, and one way to do that is to pursue this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Natalie Schwab. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I'm here to speak in support of requiring immunizations. Vaccines are one of the most successful medical advances in modern times. Most vaccine-preventable illnesses are unfamiliar to modern parents. Because of this, parents are increasingly questioning the necessity of immunizing their children, especially because no vaccine is completely free of adverse effects or risks of complications. We should be aware of the risks and benefits of recommended immunizations. Vermicell is currently used only in some multi-dose vials of influenza vaccine, and exposure through vaccine is not associated with adverse neurological outcomes. The measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is not associated with autism. Vaccines are associated with local reactions such as pain, swelling, redness. The rotavirus vaccine minimally increases the risk of intussusception, whereas other vaccines minimally increase the risk of syncope. The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System and National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program track adverse events and allow compensation for documented harms from vaccinations. There are several accounts of early inoculation in China and India, as early as 1500, possibly as early as 200 BC. Since that time, many advances have been made. In 1800, Benjamin Waterhouse, a Harvard professor of medicine, performed the first U.S. vaccination on his own children. He went to put on much effort to encourage public vaccination. He wrote President John Adams when he was convinced that President Adams wasn't interested. He wrote Vice President Thomas Jefferson. In response to Waterhouse's prospect of exterminating the smallpox, Jefferson wrote to the Waterhouse, "Every friend of humanity must look with pleasure on this discovery, by which one evil more is withdrawn from the condition of man, and must contemplate the possibility that future improvements and discoveries may still more and more lessen the catalog of evils." Again in 1806, this time in response to Jenner's work on vaccination, then U.S. President Jefferson wrote, "Medicine has never before produced a single improvement of such utility. You have erased from the calendar of human afflictions one of its greatest." In closing, the bottom line is that some believe that naturally acquired immunity from having the disease itself is better than the immunity provided by vaccines. However, natural infections can cause severe complications and can be deadly. This is true even for diseases that many considered mild, including chickenpox. It's impossible to predict who will get serious infections that may lead to hospitalizations. Vaccines, like many medications, may cause side effects which are mild. However, many vaccine-preventable diseases symptoms can be serious or even deadly. Although many of the diseases in this country are rare, they do circulate around the world and can be brought into the U.S., putting unvaccinated children at risk. Even with advances in healthcare, the diseases that vaccines prevent can still be very serious, and vaccination is the best way to prevent them. Fear is a liar. The stones we need to fight this giant are small, so stop fearing vaccinations and fear the giant that is vaccine-preventable illness. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Saluski. I'm a Wood County resident. I'm here to read a letter on behalf of my cousin who is unable to be here tonight. She's also a Wood County resident. To the County Board, my name is Dr. Amy Falk and I'm a board-certified pediatrician at the Spires Doctors Clinic in Wisconsin Rapids. I am writing this letter strongly in favor of eliminating the personal conviction waivers for school and daycare center immunizations. Vaccines have been extensively studied and are proven to prevent disease and complications from disease. Extensive medical data shows vaccinations do not cause neurodevelopmental issues such as autism. Despite this, it is still a popular argument we hear in the clinic from people who wish to refuse vaccinations on personal beliefs. In the age of social media, misinformation spreads like wildfire, and it is our duty as healthcare and public health professionals to attempt to extinguish that fire. Though it is hard to combat entrenched beliefs and feelings, change in policy is a great way to do this. Removing the personal conviction exemption clause would be a step in the direction of ensuring as many people as possible receive these important vaccinations. Aside from the vast and clear scientific evidence that vaccines are safe, effective, and a public health necessity for all who can receive them, I have a personal reason for rallying behind this motion. My nearly 3-year-old son was born with significant kidney disease and was very sick for much of his infancy. We know that his own kidneys will not last him much longer and he will eventually require transplantation. This means his doctors will need to render him immunodeficient so he won't reject his new kidney. As a result, he will be more susceptible to all illnesses and get sicker than any other kids. If those in his classroom, at daycare, or in school are unimmunized and bring something like pertussis or measles into his world, he could, and likely would, get very sick and be at unnecessary risk of death. The same story goes for all children that are immunosuppressed, such as children who are born that way or those courageously battling cancer. Without a doubt, in my medical mind, vaccines are the most important medical advancement of the 20th century. The current measles outbreak is a classic example of what happens when we lose herd immunity. My 3 children have all gotten their vaccines on time per the CDC's recommended schedule. I often tell patients that if there was some hidden danger or conspiracy, I would spare my children. Instead, by fully vaccinating my children, what I am sparing them is the risk of catching and falling prey to a vaccine-preventable illness. Please vote in favor of ending the use of personal conviction waivers to ensure that all children who are able to be vaccinated are vaccinated. Sincerely, Dr. Amy Falk. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Pete Steinefel, a chiropractor in Nakusa and a Wood County resident. I took an oath 21 years ago when I became a doctor to first do no harm. Every day in practice, I do not try to push my beliefs onto patients or scare them into making decisions based on my quotas or bonuses for vaccinating a certain percentage of my patient population. Rather, I educate them to make informed healthcare decisions that are best for themselves and their families. Do any of you know Marge Grant? She's the reason, one of the main reasons we have personal convictions. And whether I say fortunately or unfortunately, I have the pleasure to get to spend some time with her and have a signed book from her. The title of her book is called A Stolen Life, in honor of her son, who had an immediate vaccine reaction that led to brain swelling and seizures, and needed 24/7 care and is confined to a wheelchair. So she spent the rest of her life taking care of her son. So I'm here for kids like him, her, their family, my healthy children, their children to come. And I look at, before you go and try and strip away our personal conviction on choice, you should go after vaccine manufacturers in taking away their no liability for their product. We all go to work every day. We're responsible for what we do. I work on a patient, I'm responsible for them. Doctors and vaccine companies are not responsible if there's an adverse reaction. The federal government pays, and they've paid $4 billion so far in vaccine-related injuries and deaths. $206 million from January through September 1st of this year. So before we look at stripping our conviction, we need to look at taking away their no liability. In the folder that I gave each of you is twofold. The first half goes through ingredients that are known toxins and chemicals that are linked to serious neurologic damage. I won't go through the list of them. I highlighted some of them for you. The second half of the packet is actually a study comparing the health of vaccinated children and unvaccinated children, 6 through 12 years old in the United States. And basically it's about 666 children, 1/3 fully vaccinated, 1/3 partially vaccinated, and 1/3 unvaccinated. The vaccinated group did have lower levels of chickenpox, whooping cough, and rubella. However, if you look at the vaccinated group, had 3,000% increase in allergies, 800% increase in tubes in their ears, 500% increase in neurodevelopmental diseases, 400% increase in autism and ADHD. So we're here to make those choices and have our choice for the future. Didn't get through, sorry. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Sue Kunferman and I serve as the Wood County Health Officer and Health Department Director. Dr. Stephen Kulik is our medical advisor and he was unable to attend this evening. He is also the physician representative on the Wood County Health and Human Services Committee, and I will read a statement on his behalf. All of us want our children to be protected from harm. One of the most effective ways to protect our children from preventable harm is to vaccinate them. We know that for many members of our community, that vaccines is a complex and sometimes fraught with emotion. As we endeavor together to reach the common goal of protecting our children, we must rely on knowledge and facts as opposed to feelings and assumptions. We know that there is a great deal of information on the efficacy and safety of vaccines available on the internet and social media. Not all sources of information are equally credible or have been subjected to the same open, public, scientific review. We therefore need to focus on scientific consensus, sound public health policy, and what evidence actually tells us. What we know after decades of experience with vaccines is that the benefits of vaccination vastly outweigh the risks. Put simply, vaccines have been shown to be safe and effective. In the past, epidemics of diphtheria, pertussis, and polio, for example, decimated communities, typically claiming the lives of the most vulnerable, including children. Most people living today in developed countries have never seen the devastating effects of these illnesses, as effective vaccines have been developed and millions of doses have been safely administered. In order to protect children from vaccine-preventable illnesses, all 50 states have laws requiring children attending school to be vaccinated against certain diseases. All 50 states allow medical exemptions
45 states allow religious exemptions, and 15 states allow personal conviction waivers. We know that childhood vaccination rates have declined significantly in states that allow personal conviction waivers. For this reason, the number of states allowing these waivers is decreasing. In Wood County specifically, our vaccination rate for children entering school was 80% in 2013. It is currently down to 72%. The cost to the Health Department in following up on vaccine preventable diseases increased 389% from 2016 to 2018. The number of unvaccinated children entering kindergarten with personal conviction waivers in Wisconsin has been rising and is now above the national average. In fact, it is 5 times higher today than it was 20 years ago. Only 4 states have higher rates of non-medical exemptions than Wisconsin. Wisconsin's policies are out of step with the rest of the country, especially amid the measles outbreak that has reached 31 states. Some people have valid medical reasons as to why they cannot be vaccinated, but the science around vaccines does not support personal conviction waivers. Based on these facts, we urge the Wood County Board of Supervisors to focus on the public health impacts of personal conviction exemptions and register their support for removing this exemption from Wisconsin's vaccination requirements. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rhea Katowski. I work here in Wood County in Wisconsin Rapids. Many of you may be wondering, if we didn't vaccinate for diseases, wouldn't we see a lot of deaths like we did a long time ago? Despite common belief, infectious disease deaths decreased 85 to 90% before vaccines were introduced in the United States. Diseases which never had a vaccine, including scarlet fever, tuberculosis, cholera, typhoid, followed the same downward trend over time. What, might you ask, was the biggest reason for the decline in deaths from diseases? Over the last century, we've seen massive improvements in nutrition, sanitation, clean water, plumbing systems, and access to medical care. So when you hear that vaccines are the only reason we are not dying from these diseases, you know that this is a major misconception. Many of you have heard over and over how safe and effective vaccines are. We hear it constantly from mainstream media, doctors, nurses, and agencies like the CDC. But what about all of the people who have stories of vaccine injury? My best friend received an H1N1 flu vaccine in 2009 and shortly thereafter developed massive migraines and then paralysis in her lower limbs and inability to urinate and blurred vision. After multiple tests turned up negative, the doctors were baffled. When she mentioned she had just received a flu vaccine, the doctors immediately dismissed it. One look at the vaccine package insert would have shown that this was listed as a possible adverse reaction and should have been reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. A study done by Harvard showed that only 1 to 10% of adverse reactions ever get reported. My son, Oliver, born healthy, meeting milestones, and being social in our family, began to regress just days after his 15-month round of vaccines, which included the MMR vaccine. A boy who once turned to the sound of its name, played peekaboo and pat a cake, was suddenly off in a corner in his own world, oblivious to those around him. You may be thinking right now that autism has been proven not to be caused by vaccines, but did you know that only one ingredient and one vaccine have ever been studied for a connection to autism? And one of the studies done by the CDC to confirm safety of the MMR vaccine was fraudulently manipulated to make the connection disappear. Dr. William Thompson, senior scientist at the CDC and lead researcher on that paper, admitted that they left out statistically significant findings which would have shown that the MMR vaccine was possibly causing autism. Vaccines are not tested using double-blind, placebo-based trials like they would for drugs, the gold standard of medicine. There have been 0 studies comparing children who get the full vaccine schedule to children who get no vaccines to determine which group is healthier. In closing, we should all agree that at least these types of studies that I've just mentioned and many more should be done before voting on whether or not to take our rights to choose away from us. Please vote no on this resolution. Thank you all for your time.
Hi, I'm Scott Olson. I am a physician. I practice and live in Wood County. I am actually a pediatric infectious disease physician, so I specialize primarily in management and treatment of severe infections, complicated infections, and infections in those members of the pediatric community who are most at risk. I'm not going to speak a little bit to the to the general points that have been discussed about the epidemiology of infectious diseases, but I think that what gets lost in these discussions sometimes is the outcome of those diseases in individuals who happen to get sick. I think sometimes we believe that these are not severe infections, and so I wanted to speak a little bit to my personal experience in managing and treating infections that are otherwise vaccine preventable. I'm not going to go into too many details on these cases for HIPAA reasons, but over the course of my 10 years of practice within pediatric infectious diseases specifically, I have seen infants who have passed away from pertussis. I've seen teenagers, one teenager who lost all 4 limbs to meningococcal disease and resultant sepsis. I've seen infants hospitalized with meningitis, their spinal fluid coming out of a lumbar puncture looking like pus from pneumococcus and Haemophilus influenza B. I've seen infants dehydrated to the point of lethargy requiring multiple days of IV fluids inpatient from rotavirus. I've seen children die from severe influenza who otherwise were considered high risk. And I've seen children neurologically devastated from natural infection with measles encephalitis. I've counseled families of cancer patients who have been exposed to chickenpox in school and other social settings, individuals who are otherwise at high risk for very severe disease. These are all vaccine preventable illnesses. These are all real outcomes when those at-risk individuals get infected. So again, I just want to bring up again that these are severe infections. These are infections that put the most at-risk individuals in our community at risk of very severe outcomes and severe morbidity and mortality. I am a pediatrician. I'm in this field because I care about children. I went into infectious diseases because I know the real severe outcomes that occur, and I recognize that vaccines have been one of the biggest advancements in public health in the 20th century. Yes, hygiene has been helpful, but there have been several vaccines, including rotavirus, pneumococcus, Haemophilus influenza B, where the morbidity and mortality has dropped in the modern era when those hygiene measures had been implemented. Vaccines work. Vaccines work. They've been studied. We know they're effective. And I think that we as responsible members of the community owe it to those who are most at risk, the young, the elderly, the immunocompromised, that we help protect those individuals. In my last seconds, I'm also a parent. I have 2 children. They're both fully immunized. They will be fully immunized. I believe in these products. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amber. I'm a mother of 3, and I just feel, bottom line, that whether you choose to vaccinate or you don't vaccinate, I think it's your choice. I think as a mom and a dad, we all want what's best for our children, and I believe it's our decision to talk it over with our doctor, to talk it over with our child, they're old enough, and make the decision that way. As an adult, we don't want the government to tell us what we should do with our body. I think as an adult, we come to terms with our doctor and we make that decision. And I think having children, my 3, it terrifies me to vaccinate them. It terrifies me to not vaccinate them. I try to make the best decision I can because I want what's best for my child, whether it's what I feed them, where I take them, what I do with them. I do what's best for them. And I just don't want it to come down to a decision that somebody tells me that I don't have to vaccinate my kids, because that could happen too. And I don't want someone to tell me that I have to vaccinate my kids. I think it's just a decision that as a parent you do what's best and you decide that with your personal doctor. So I just ask you vote no.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Patty Schumacher. I'm a chiropractor and I have a postdoctoral degree in pediatrics, so I see a multitude of children in my practice. I'm not here to tell you whether vaccines are good or bad. There's been enough comments on that. What I'm here to tell you is I respect the choice. It's all about the way the law was written in the first place. I am a 2-time cancer survivor and I'm 2-time survivor, and I did it naturally. I chose not to do it medically. That was my choice. And guess what? I've been cancer-free for 23 years. That's my choice, and that should be the choice of all the parents. All the parents that have to get their children in school, they are doing the research. I would really like to know how many of you have done your research of which vaccines are even required. What are the dosages? Did you know that chickenpox is on that list? None of you were vaccinated for chickenpox. Why is it needed now? It's not in the United Kingdom because they've noticed adverse reactions. Same goes for MMR. Japan has pulled it from their list of recommended dosages. There's reasons for that, but it should be a choice. I want you, and I urge every one of you to do your own homework before you vote on this resolution. It has been a choice in Wisconsin for many, many years, and I'm asking you, let us keep that choice.
Hi, my name is Olivia Chastain, and it has been mentioned that vaccine manufacturers don't have any liability, and that $4.1 billion has been paid out to vaccine victims through the National Vaccine Compensation Programs. U.S. taxpayers fund this money, not the vaccine manufacturers themselves. I know that many are concerned about measles, but let's consider that 2014 was the last case of measles in Wisconsin. There were 2 cases in Wisconsin that year. This year, there have been 1,241 reported cases of measles in the entire U.S. and a population of over 329 million. That equates to 0.0003772%. The death rate from measles in 2019 is 0. This small risk does not warrant stripping away parental rights, especially when vaccines have risks. As of May 31st, 2019, in Wisconsin alone, there have been more than 11,794 reports of vaccine reactions made to the Federal Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System called VAERS, including 65 related deaths, 648 hospitalizations, and 208 related disabilities. VAERS is a voluntary reporting system, and a 3-year review funded by U.S. Health and Services found that fewer than 1% of adverse events are ever reported. So realistically, the numbers I read off can be multiplied by at least 100. Medical exemptions are incredibly difficult to obtain. CDC guidelines state if your child has an anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine, they should only be medically exempt from that particular vaccine, none of the others. I know parents who have had that happen with a child, and wouldn't you want the right to, after carrying your limp and unresponsive child to the ER, wouldn't you want the right to choose? I support personal belief exemptions because this is personal. I ran cross country in high school, and when I was vaccinated the summer afterwards, running suddenly gave me severe complications. My first year in college, I ended up in the ER because of this. I would not qualify for a medical exemption. My son was born with telltale signs of a genetic mutation that puts him at a higher risk of a vaccine reaction. He does not qualify for a medical exemption. My baby boy, who I love more than my own life, does not qualify for an exemption that would protect his health and his life. As a mom, I will always do what is in the best interest of my child to protect them. This bill takes away my right to protect my son. For those of you who have kids, imagine how you'd feel if the state tried to take away your right to protect your child. From my point of view, this is gross government overreach. I don't care if you choose to vaccinate or not, but I don't believe the government should impede on the rights to bodily autonomy, mandating a one-size-fits-all medicine when not even Tylenol is one-size-fits-all. But this is especially troubling when there are clear risks. Please, I urge you to side with parental rights over pharmaceutical companies and vote no.
Good evening. I'm Dr. John Dietrich, a chiropractor here in Wisconsin Rapids. I live in this community. First of all, thank you for your service. It takes a lot of courage to run for public office as the job, and the decisions that you have to make are not always easy. I feel that you have been called to this position as you truly believe that you are able to make a difference in our community. Representing the views of your constituents is not always an easy task. I come to speak today to have you vote no on this resolution of removing the personal conviction waiver for school entry. This is bigger than vaccine, or to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. This is a situation of medical freedom. This is a situation of choice. We have learned already that the National Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 limited the liability of the vaccine manufacturers and the healthcare professionals that administrate these vaccines. That began taking place in 1988. It was a limited liability at that point. Until 2011, the Supreme Court then removed all vaccine liability. At the same time, the Supreme Court also stated in the case of Bruchwitz versus Wyeth that vaccines are inherently dangerous. Along with the creation of that act, we have heard about the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. $4.1 billion of taxpayer money has been spent, not funded by the vaccine manufacturers who have no liability. I want to take this to a different level though. History is forgotten. It used to be about 10 years until we would forget something. Now we're looking at 3, and with the amount of information that's being pushed on us by social media and other areas, we forget about things that happened a few days ago. Let's go back to World War II. Do we remember the trials of the war criminals in Nuremberg, Germany? They were pretty intense. I'm going to read a couple of points from the Nuremberg Code that was created at that time. Number 1, the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have the legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise the free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and the comprehension and the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. This latter requirement requires that before acceptance of an affirmative decision by the experimental subject, there should be made known to him the nature, duration, and purpose of the procedure and the methods and the means by which it is conducted. All inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected and the effect upon his or health or person which may possibly come from this participation in this procedure. Then another point says, no procedure should be conducted where there is a priori reason to believe that death or disability injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians are also served as subjects. This choice, this informed consent that we have, goes back to World War II. This is critical that you vote no on this because it is our right for informed consent and to say no. Thank you.
Hi there, sorry, I don't usually do this sort of thing, so you're going to have to listen to me kind of stutter through it, so I apologize in advance.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Yep. So, I'm actually not from this county, but we drove 2 hours to get here, so I hope that means something. Here's a list of things that were safe because manufacturers lobbied for more profit. Smoking cigarettes, asbestos, DDT, lead paint.
Sir, can you speak into the microphone?
Talcum powder. Formula was better than breast milk. Cars without seatbelts. That was a 15-year battle in the courts just to get seatbelts in cars. The vaccine schedule is set up for maximum profit, not maximum safety. They have billions of dollars behind their decisions. I have my morals and a desire to do what's best for my family. I deserve the choice to look at the studies not funded by the company making billions. This is a pretty big movement. There's a lot of people on both sides of this argument. The difference is they have billions of dollars on their side. I have my family on mine. I think it's pretty important that we kind of step back and look at where the money is. You always follow the trail of money and you can see the truth.
Good evening. My name is Rose. I am a mother of 3 beautiful, amazing, thriving, smart, very healthy children. They range from the age of 11 to 14. Not one of them have ever taken any over-the-counter drug, any prescription drug, or ever been vaccinated. I am not going to allow someone to try to fix them when they are not broken. It is absurd to allow that, and it just doesn't make any sense. They do not suffer from asthma, allergies, ear infections, ADHD, ADD, behavioral issues, speech issues, and it is not a fluke. There is a good reason for that. It is the health choices and care that my husband and I have provided for our kids. I am not against medical intervention and medications. There is a time and place for that, and I'm thankful for that as well. But for overall general health, it is not only a one-way road. It is clearly not black and white. There are other ways to maintain good health. It's what we have worked so hard over the past 14 plus years to give to our children. And it's what we know they need. And last night, walking out of the parent-teacher conferences, just reiterated that back to us. We are doing something right. These are our kids that are continuously being praised and commended for their outstanding academics, their focus, their concentration, their good behavior, and their kind hearts. They are thriving and are and they're going to be productive, healthy adults without being vaccinated. It is not the pharmaceutical companies, it's not the medical doctors with prescriptions, and it's not the government, it's not the vaccines that is making them healthy. It is the informed choices we have made for our family. Do not obey, please. Have and maintain your voice for freedom of choice and personal conviction. We believe that everyone in this room agrees that we have fought so hard for our voice and for our freedom to choose. Thank you.
First of all, thank you again for having us here and listening to our pleas. I'm going to talk on several levels. The first being our freedom as Americans. Many of you fought in wars for freedom and protection for our country, but then also to protect those people that were in governments of tyranny. When we start releasing our rights as Americans, we're never going to get them back. It's going to be a very hard pull to get an exemption back. I just want you to just remember that word, freedom, and why so many fought and they lose their lives to protect. And us as parents, I think the medical community and us parents who choose not to vaccinate are both on the same page. We want to protect our children. We want good health outcomes, but we're looking at it from different ways. There are many of us in the room that would say we blindly trusted the medical community. We blindly trusted our medical doctors. We believed in them. We believed in those visits, the well child visits, when we would go and show up, and we're trained to do that in that first year of attending our well child visits, to get poked and have reactions to those vaccines. Most of the people here that are in stance of keeping our personal exemptions are people that have had children who have been vaccine injured. And I just want you to remember, many of you might drink. I know we're in Wisconsin, so I just moved here 6 years ago. There's a lot more drinking going on here than there was in Minnesota. But you might have a glass of wine or a glass of whiskey, and you might have the same, and it will affect you differently. One size does not fit all, and you have to remember that. You're vaccinating children with the same doses as an infant as you are 15-year-olds, with the same amount of vaccination, with the same amount of aluminum, with the same amount of mercury. When you give a child, my son was vaccine injured in the hospital 18 years ago. I didn't have that correlation yet of what was going on. But boy, I've awakened in the last 8 years that the problems that he's had since then are most likely related to that. So I would say this to you. As a medical community, I think you've been lied to from the CDC, from the FDA, from our governing agencies. And I don't put all the blame on you as medical doctors, but there's been a loss of trust between a lot of parents and the medical community, and we will not bring our children to doctors unless there's dire need. So let's work on rebuilding that trust, and it's not going to come from mandating something to have us put into our bodies. And I'll say in the last 8 seconds, if you're
vaccinated with the chickenpox, you can spread that up to 6 weeks. So let's keep those children out of school for those 6 weeks after vaccinations, as well as the whooping
Ma'am,
cough.
that is 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Can we have her name?
Oh,
Sorry.
Julie Hill.
Here we go. Thank you. We're at 47 minutes right now in public comment. We will allow 3 more speakers. If there are anyone else that wants to speak, we will allow 3 more speakers.
Hi, my name is Jessica Hasano. I grew up believing that vaccines were safe and effective. My father retired out of the medical community after 30 years of practice. Then in 2003, I received the flu vaccine and I got very sick. I never recovered. I was later diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis and I'm still dealing with that today. But when I was growing up, I received 6 vaccines and I was considered fully vaccinated. I lived in a very healthy generation. Today, children are required to receive 72 vaccines and autoimmune illness is running rampant. This vaccination schedule was created by the pharmaceutical industry and was never tested for safety. We have no idea how the amount of vaccines is affecting your child, or the timing of them, or even the effects of combining all of them together. None of this was studied. Without this knowledge, we are now living science experiments. You don't have to be anti-vax to question if maybe 72 vaccines is too many, or to decide if maybe you'd like to skip a vaccine like Gardasil or the flu shot. But if we lose our philosophical exemptions, our other rights and exemptions will soon follow. We've watched California lose their philosophical exemption, then their religious exemption, and now many injured children are unable to obtain medical exemption in that state due to the high pressure and threats being put on doctors who are afraid to investigate or will be investigated for doing their jobs. I don't want to see that happen in Wisconsin. I understand there's a concern about raising herd immunity at the moment, but herd immunity cannot be attained when live attenuated vaccines cause something scientists refer to as viral shedding. When vaccinated individuals become asymptomatic and they spread the very disease they are vaccinated for up to 8 weeks. Another concern is a scientific term called antigenic sin, which describes how viruses we vaccinate for have the ability to mutate and spread sometimes regardless of vaccination. This explains why roughly half the people who got measles during the outbreaks were already vaccinated for it, or why we can get the flu shot and still get the flu that year. I also understand that there's a lot of concern about measles outbreaks, but according to the CDC's own statistics, 0.001% or lower is the fatality rate going all the way back to 1900. The subject of vaccines is complicated and scientific, but it's not going to be solved by taking away rights or freedom. Every human deserves the right to philosophically object to medical treatment and the right to choose what goes into their body or their child's body. When we lose the right to use our own conscience, to use our own reasoning to make decisions for ourselves, we lose our freedom and is soon replaced by medical tyranny. Most of us were taught in school about the Holocaust and the horrific events that happened to the Jews and the forced medical experimentation that happened to them. And out of that horrible event came a set of ethics that was meant to protect us from ever letting that happen again. It's called the Nuremberg Code, which someone else spoke of briefly. I often wondered as a child how something so horrific as the Holocaust was even
That
able
is
to
3
happen.
minutes, ma'am.
Please keep our medical freedom. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tabitha Lindell. I'm here to ask you to vote no on this resolution. I was also fully vaccinated when I was younger, and life was a lot easier then. I don't think anyone chooses to wake up, or the majority anyway, just to stick it to the man. Most people have seen or witnessed vaccine reaction or death firsthand. I was actually vaccine injured by the Gardasil vaccine after the second dose, and it was a terrible, like 5 years at least, and I was fortunate to recover my health. But even after that, I still would have been pro-vax. It was when I started having kids that I listened to the parents, the consumer, and I heard these stories of death, and especially infants, and how they were really scorned at and laughed off that there could be a correlation when it was so obvious to them that their healthy child all of a sudden high fevers, screaming in the ER, just vaccinated, like he said, and they have a seizure disorder now. They said, oh, it was a coincidence, which explains why so many aren't reported in the VAERS system. The Harvard University did that study that people spoke about. They estimated 1% of injuries are actually ever reported. And again, over $4 billion have been paid out. That makes sense to me. And the folder that my lovely husband gave you all, that I'm sure you're pleased to be holding, is hundreds of cases of vaccine injuries and deaths. The majority of them were not compensated. There are thousands of people who have been affected by this. Again, we didn't wake up one day and just try to be difficult. If you take away the right to this exemption, there are going to be injuries and deaths as a result of that, because people who saw this possibility chose that to not vaccinate their kids or to postpone. Maybe they don't like one vaccination. You're saying, no, we can't. You have to do all of them, as the CDC schedule says. The CDC schedule is never tested as it's administered. There's no study showing that that is safe and effective as it's administered. That is ludicrous to me. Benefit needs to outweigh the risk, right? That's just common sense. But we don't have an accurate picture of what that risk is, when even Harvard University itself says the VAERS system it's irresponsible. If you're taking this right away from parents, then those injuries and deaths, I'm sorry, but that will be on you. Because if that's not the parents' right, then it was your choice. And you talk about, again, the immunocompromised. Immunocompromised lives are no better or more important than the kids who are injured, who were healthy and died.
3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Smith and I'm a chiropractor in Nakusa, and I am pro-choice. However, this bill currently circulating is quite alarming to me, and here's why. We as parents should be able to make decisions regarding medical procedures for our children. Vaccination does pose a risk, and we believe it's best for our family to abstain from them if need be. How can something with death as a side effect on an insert be mandated without exemptions? So vaccine manufacturers hold no liability in the event that my child is injured by a vaccine. This was signed into law in 1986, and since then the Department of Health and Human Services was obligated to submit biannual safety reports to Congress as of last year. And for the last 32 years, that was proven to have never been done, and that was taken to federal court. And over 90,000 adverse events have been associated with the measles vaccine alone. So the safety and the well-being of my children is my #1 concern. And if these products haven't been tested for safety, how can I feel safe when giving them to my children? In the 1940s, they only had 4 vaccines. In the 1950s, there were only 5. And today, there are 72 given by the age of 18. And they have only been tested individually, but not accumulatively with the schedule of 72. And they haven't been properly scientifically tested against an inert placebo. Like all science and medications are tested. So why should vaccines be tested any differently? So the AMA reserves the right to refuse vaccinations in lieu of their personal exemption waiver. Why are we as parents not afforded the same courtesy and the same rights when seeking a public education for our children? We have a history of immunodeficiency in my family. My husband is being autoimmune, and I don't feel comfortable giving my child adjuvants and chemicals that would disrupt their genetically fragile system, and I shouldn't have to have a doctor's note for it. I should be able to exercise my parental right and refuse. Please understand where the rights lay with the parents, not the state. And there's a Dr. Susan Humphreys has an amazing publication that breaks down the truth about disease eradication, where it comes from a clean water, sewage, and proper hygiene to think, and as well as refrigeration, pasteurization, and advanced medical care despite inoculation. So please, give us the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as the government was instituted to do from the consent of the people. We don't consent.
And that will conclude the public comment section of our meeting this evening. Thank you all for your comments and for being here, and thank you for being civil during the discussion. We have no acknowledgements and recognitions this evening, and that will get us into the packet. And if there is no objection, I would like to move the resolution on the personal conviction to the forefront of the packet for your consideration this evening. Is there any objection from the county board? Seeing none, we will move that resolution forward from page 76. I would entertain a motion concerning that resolution. I'm sorry, yes. Please, would the clerk read that?
Absolutely. This will be resolution 19-10-1 to request the Wisconsin legislature end the use of personal conviction waivers for school and daycare center immunizations. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that resolution? Supervisor Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the individuals on both sides of this for coming tonight. I'm not stuck on the question on it, but there's one thing that did come up with me is on the resolution, the seventh whereas. My understanding that's called the herd policy that they have in it. And I read where it was 90%, but here in Wood County it's about 95%. Is that correct? Because you say it's 4.6.
Without objection. Public health nurse.
The immunization percentage in Wood County decreased to 72% for 2018.
Okay, thank you. I was in the military in the 60s, 61 to 65, and I was on an aircraft carrier, and that has really nothing to do with it except the number of people we had on the aircraft carrier. However, it was my opinion that we were guinea pigs for the flu vaccinations. And I was the third person on the ship to get that flu vaccination, and I was very sick from it. And it was even with a gun. It was done with a gun, not individual. And several other times there was that. And being in the service, you know, I think of, do we have a right to salute the flag or not salute the flag? Yes, we have that. So on this particular motion, I am voting no, because I think it's a personal right. I think it's a right that people served in the military and do their duties here. I appreciate all the comments for it and the professional comments, but I think people should have this right, and I am voting no on this. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Supervisor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like it noted that I'm not quite as old as Supervisor Clendenning. I'm not on the ship
Nobody's
in the 60s.
The ship was the Ark. Yeah.
And we didn't do much fishing because we only had two worms.
This becomes one of those resolutions that's somewhat difficult because I'm typically one of those person who believes in personal choice above all else. But for me, and my background is biomedical engineering with a pretty heavy dose of biology and a pretty heavy dose of chemistry along the way. And I have listened to the medical community. And I've listened to my wife, who's a neonatal ultrasonographer. And when I look at the damage that can occur to millions of people, as opposed to the number of stories, and even if we take if we believe that every one of those is factual, far outweighs those anecdotal stories that we hear. We're looking at the protection of millions of school-age children, and we're looking at the damage that has come, and we've seen outbreaks. I don't know if we can call them epidemics, but we've certainly seen regional outbreaks that have affected large communities, and I only see that getting worse if we don't pass this particular resolution. So I would support this, and I'd ask those on our board to also do so. Thank you.
Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'll be honest, I came in to tonight's meeting with some thoughts and some ideas, and my position hasn't changed. I will be voting no, but one thing that struck me is that first and foremost, I think we got a glimpse of democracy tonight, and the fact that people have a right to come before their county board and share conflicting views and share conflicting opinions on such things. And someone said it, and I don't remember who, and I apologize, but someone said, encouraged us to do our homework. And I'll be the first one to admit, I hold to an opinion, but in no means do I consider myself an expert. But with that said, I do believe in the core of my heart and my being in individual rights and in the rights of parents. And so I will be voting no in the belief that parents should be the ones to choose what is best for their children. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the motion? Vice Chair Rother.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be voting in favor of this motion, of this resolution, and for a number of reasons. I was born in 1950, almost died of pertussis when I was about 9 months old. The vaccine had come out pretty shortly after that, and I personally believe that immunizations are one of the marvels of the 20th century and has actually increased the longevity that we are experiencing. I'm also a registered nurse educator, teach nursing students at UW-Eau Claire College of Nursing. I have taken care of people with sequelae from the various diseases, chickenpox and then shingles later on. And I can tell you that they are not pleasant diseases to take care of in the hospital setting. You know, we talk about government making rules for the safety of our children. I would believe that all of you use seat belts for your children when you put them in your car. That was a government mandated thing. It was a safety thing that was done to protect our children. I challenge any of you to drive on the left side of the road when you go home tonight. I think our wonderful Sheriff's Department would object to that. And these are things that we have made community standards in order to protect the community. I do not think that this resolution takes away parental rights. And you know, we talk about us, we are not making this rule. This rule goes to the state legislature. So that's the next place to stand up and make your comments. We are only recommending for the protection of our community, and I don't think that that's anything but good governance. I personally am pretty much of a libertarian and do believe in personal rights, but we also have the thought of protecting our community. And I think that when we look at the protection of our community, we have a responsibility as elected officials to think about the community and not just our personal beliefs. And so that's why I would be voting yes for this resolution.
Any further discussion? Supervisor Ashbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and honor all everybody. When I grew up as a child, the polio epidemic was a serious effect, and I have people yet right now that have a crippling effect of this polio. And how else would this got stopped? I mean, that was I'm probably one of the older ones in the building here that remember that, because it was a serious thing at that time. And like I say, I still have a couple of friends yet that still have affected that polio when they were teenagers. So, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes 11-6. Moving on into the packet. Pages 6 through 15. I'm sorry, Supervisor Clendenin.
Can we just take a break while the people want to leave this way? I got all of them. This is where...
We're recessed for 5 minutes. We are back in session. We are back in the packet, starting with Executive Committee minutes on pages 6 through 15. Renewables and Sustainables Committee, pages 16 through 18. Administrative Coordinators Report on page 19. County Clerk on 20. Finance Director, pages 21 through 32. Human Resources, 33 through 37. More Executive Committee minutes on page 38. IT, 39 through 42. And that brings us to Facilities Manager on 43. Treasurer, page 44. Brings us to our first 6 resolutions, which I believe we can take together without objection. And I would ask the clerk to read those, please.
Okay, so we're on page 45, and this will become Resolution 19-10-2. To authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Fiscal note, paid amount of $5,855.65. Page 46 will become Resolution 19-10-3. To authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Fiscal note, paid amount of $2,796.83. Page 47 will become Resolution 19-10-4. To authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Fiscal note, paid amount of $9,866.84. Page 48 will become Resolution 19-10-5. To authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Paid amount of $6,972.94. Page 49 becomes Resolution 19-10-6. Authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Fiscal note, paid amount of $5,019.73. Page 50 becomes Resolution 19-10-7. To authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Paid amount of $4,899.19. And God help me if I whisper that statement to my wife tonight when we go to bed.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolutions. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to page 51 for our 8th resolution this evening, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
Okay, this on page 51, this will become Resolution 19-10-8. To accept the offer of sale of tax deed property. Fiscal note, the offered amount minus real estate taxes, tax deed expense, and special charges result in a gain of 0.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded. Is there any discussion regarding that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously as well. That takes us to our 9th resolution, brought by the Executive Committee, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-10-9. Tax deed eligible property to authorize the tax deeding of property in compliance with Section 7514 Wisconsin statutes. Fiscal note, the taxes, special charges, delinquent utilities, publication fees, and tax deeding expense total $163,303.88.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion regarding that motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously as well. That takes us to our next resolution, also brought by executive, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-10-10, to cancel stale dated checks as recommended by the auditors. Said checks from the county general account as per the office of county treasurer. Fiscal note, as per the resolution, total to be canceled is $3,800.40.
A motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote. Thank you. And that takes us to our final resolution brought by the Executive Committee on page 57, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-10-11, to adopt the attached Wood County Energy Goals and Plan in order for Wood County to be designated Soul Smart Gold by the U.S. Department of Energy. Fiscal note, no direct cost to Wood County. However, the county and residents may see future energy cost savings through renewables and sustainable energy generation practices.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote. 17-0 again. Thank you very much. And on pages 58 and 59, we have that energy goals and plan for Wood County. Minutes from Health and Human Services on pages 60 through 63. Health Department 64 through 67. Human Services pages 68 through 72. Veterans on 73 and 74. And that takes us to our 12th resolution brought by the Health and Human Services Committee, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-10-12, to support Assembly Bill 76, Senate Bill 103, the CNA training bill. Fiscal note, none.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Supervisor Clendenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Somebody convinced me to vote for this. I can't, it just seems to me like we want lesser educated people because we can get them cheaper. Tell me that's not so. Because I know in industry and stuff like that, you have to somewhat qualify in order to become a millwright and things like that. So we want those people to have less education and do the same work they're doing now.
Supervisor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to be voting for this, and here's my position. I don't think anybody I don't think that a healthcare facility is going to put someone out who's not ready, trained, and able to do their job. I have confidence in the leadership at those facilities, and I have confidence that when someone is ready, they will be able to perform their duties. That is simply how I look at it. As far as the training, if we follow, from my understanding, and go with the federal regulations, if the federal regulations change and more training hours are in place, we will follow suit as well. So I'm going to be voting for this. Thank you.
So I would just like to clarify that just because we're requesting that the hours that they have to become a CNA does not mean that they're going to get less pay because which we're matching that to their education. And I'll tell you how it works in the healthcare field. Every facility has so many continuing education things that we do. It's lifelong learning. We go into, whether we're CNAs, whether we're registered nurses, whatever our role is, we constantly have continuing education. It's lifelong learning. You don't finish a degree that qualifies you to work with patients without having all kinds of computer-based training that you have to do, continual education on new equipment that comes out, to do chem strips to check people's blood glucose. It's just continuing. The only thing that this is doing is dropping the hours to match what the federal government recommends in order that we can get these individuals to a job faster. That's what we're doing. It has nothing to do with how much we're going to pay them. Like Supervisor Fisher said, no facility is going to allow somebody that's incompetent to take care of people. So even when they finish their education, there's an orientation that occurs at the facility that makes sure that that person knows what they're doing. So we're not dropping the standard of care at all, nor how much we're paying these people, because we're requiring less hours.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously as well. On page 76, you'll find the resolution that we move forward to the beginning of the packet. Public Safety Committee minutes on pages 77 through 81. Coroner's report on 82. Humane Officer, pages 83 through 86. Sheriff's Rescue on pages 87 through 91. Various Sheriff's Department reports on pages 92 through 112. And that brings us to our 14th resolution this evening, brought by the Public Safety Committee. And I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-10-13. Approve and adopt the courthouse screening and controlled access policy as presented by the Wood County Sheriff's Department in the attached document. Fiscal note, none.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that resolution? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Then that policy is on pages 114 through 123. You'll be following the resolution. Service animals definition, I don't know if that was designed to go in with that policy. I believe it was, on pages 124 through 127. And that brings us to our next resolution brought by Public Safety. I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-10-14. To authorize Wood County to enter into an agreement and seek funding under Wisconsin Statute Section 165.90 for law enforcement services on restricted tribal lands. Fiscal note, $36,584.
We have a motion and a second on the floor regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion regarding that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously as well. Seed Committee minutes on pages 129 through 137. Seed tour information on pages 138 through 139. I see they had a big bus load that day, so many of you might, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Supervisor Leyna.
Mr. Chairman, if we could go back, actually I want to go back a month, but it's from page 133. I want to call the board's attention to the passage of Resolution 19-9-7. So if you don't remember what that was support for the Central Sands Groundwater County Collaborative. And then there was also the desire in there to seek state funding. So if you remember a month ago when we voted on that here in Wood County, that was a unanimous vote. Now I know you've seen a lot tonight. I want to make sure you're aware that among the 6 counties, Juneau, Adams, Waushara, Portage, and Marquette, besides Wood, that vote was unanimous on the same day in all 6 of our counties. And I hope you realize how much work, it was about 10 months of work that went into that vote. And what I'd like to do very briefly today is just recognize some of our county workers who had a hand in creating this county collaborative. It's like something I've never seen in my 3 terms. So from our Wood County Health Department, Sue Comferman and Nancy Eggleston worked extensively on that. From Land and Water Conservation, Shane Wucherfenning. And then from UW Extension, Nancy Turek and her boss, Jason Hausler. And please realize also that while they were working here in those 3 departments, Health, Land and Water Conservation, and UW Extension, that their counterparts in the other 5 counties were also doing the same thing. So that combined vote then a month ago, that was up like 120 to nothing. So I think what we can take from all of that is certainly clean water is an idea whose time has come. I want to take one more step here and recognize 2 events that you may have seen in your packet if you read very carefully, or you may have seen in emails, but I just want to bring those forward to you. SEED, our SEED committee, lobbied for and helped interview the hiring of, quotes now, a Wood County regional, serving several counties, natural resources educator. We'll house her in the closet at UW Extension downstairs. But anyway, we're happy to have Rachel Whitehair. She's a recent graduate of Iowa State University, a graduate assistant who's actually published, and she'll be starting her employment with the county next Monday. So well done to the committee on that, and well done Chairman Curry on that. The other thing I want to point out to you, and I'll sit down, is Wood County received notification last Thursday from the Associate Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences at UW-Madison. It was an incredible letter. I read it over just a number of times. This had to do with one of our other resolutions. I think we passed that 2 months ago. And that was to develop nitrogen application rate guidelines for groundwater protection. So what the UW-Madison College is doing is they are assembling, and I'm going to quote from the letter right now, they're assembling a substantial group of nutrient management and water quality experts from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at UW-Madison, from the Division of Extension, and our partners at UW-Stevens Point. But that's not all they're doing. In addition to that, they've appointed a special water quality project coordinator, and in addition to that, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences will seek to partner with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, DATCAP, and NRCS. So that was quite a letter. And so then I'd like to say to all of you supervisors, you've been listening to me for almost 6 years. I am deeply, deeply appreciative of how over the years you've paid closer and closer attention to the clean water issue, and you voted unanimously on a couple of recent resolutions. I certainly appreciate that. I think we're headed in the right direction, and on it goes. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, back to pages 138 and 39, the SEED tour information, and that tour took place, I believe, last Friday. I think you had a full bus, didn't you, Jason? What, a few supervisors? 25 people. Yeah. Good turnout. Pages 140 through 143, we have the HITBAC board minutes. Land and Water Conservation, 144 through 148. Planning and Zoning, 149 through 152. UW Extension, 153 through 157. And that takes us to, I believe, our final resolution. No, we got one more after this?
2 more.
Brought by SEED, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
2 more after this one. This will be Resolution 19-10-15 to approve a zoning amendment to the Town of Grand Rapids zoning map. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The town of Grand Rapids is responsible for any costs associated with administering their town zoning ordinance.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And following pages 158 through 160 are indeed that zoning map amendment request. Judicial legislative minutes on 161 through 164. Supervisor Clendenning.
Yes, I'd just like to call your attention to page 162, 9C, in which I, by the corporation's comments that county board supervisors cannot participate in public comment or even at your committee meetings when it's called for public comment. Only those supervisors that are not on the committee can have that privilege. So if you want that changed, there'd have to be some kind of a rule made. And then on page 163, number 11, and that's considering the vacancy for the county board vacancy, to let you know that that's governed by an ordinance, and we're going to have it on our committee meeting, our first in November. We're going to have it, I forget the date, but anyways, we're going to try to change that resolution, and instead of it saying the chairman may, that will say the chairman shall. So, make an appointment. So that's what's going to be on a resolution that hasn't been presented to the board, to the committee yet. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question about that. So are you saying that there is a county ordinance right now that dictates how a vacancy on the county board is filled?
Peter, did you want to address it without objection? Peter? It's an ordinance, it's not a county board rule, that's the difference, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there is an ordinance, I think it's 906, and it does address that the county board chairman may fill the position, and then it's the position, whoever it's appointed is approved, subject to approval by the county board. And so what Supervisor Clendenning is saying is that he wants the committee that's looking at this to say that the county board chairman shall fill it if in fact the position is going to be vacant for more than 4 months till the next election. But to answer the question, yes, there is an ordinance and it is permissive.
Okay, again, judicial legislative 161 through 164. Criminal Justice Task Force 165 through 167. Supervisor Leitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at page 167, and of course that's from the Criminal Justice Task Force minutes. I don't think I've ever seen in our packets, which have grown to over 300 pages on occasional months, I don't think I've ever seen the results of a vote on something. And there have been a number of times when I've wanted to call the county clerk and say, you know, it's not up on the board long enough for me to see how we all voted, and I'd like to see that. I hesitate to say, but wouldn't be a bad idea if the packet went from 300 pages to 310, and at least on some of the resolutions, we saw how our cohorts voted.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Clendenning.
I remember that Criminal Justice Task Force, and I took that to them. And so they put it in their minutes, and I asked for it to be in the minutes because I was concerned about the number of people that did vote no, that you know, that needed a discussion. So that's why it's in those minutes. But yes, I do that a few times. I asked the clerk for that, and he sent me that in that form, and so I just passed it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may address Supervisor Langham's issues. Yeah, anytime you want to vote tally, call me. I'm available. And with the new system that we just implemented back in March, it's kind of nice. It's nicer. You get that nice picture of the screen. It's a screenshot instead of a typed out thing. So yeah, I actually have a request already about the first resolution wanting that. So I was kind of thinking, actually it was Supervisor Fisher that asked for it. I'm just going to send it to the whole county board because I think you're all dying to know. But understand that there's a lot that goes on behind here, so I can't keep it up as long as maybe you would like, or however long it takes you to read it. So if you ever want, just let me know. I'm happy to email that to you next day, or well, when we meet in the morning, I can email it to you that day.
Okay, we move on. Child support on 168. Register of Deeds 169. Our next resolution brought by J&L. And I'd ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-10-16, to encourage the Wisconsin Legislature to revise the statutes for a consistent charge for court costs, fees, and surcharges in the offices of Clerk of Courts and Register and Probate. Fiscal note, minimal increase in fees collected.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion? No discussion? Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to our final resolution on page 172, also brought by Judicial and Legislative, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-10-17, to adopt a litigation settlement policy. Fiscal note, none.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded regarding the resolution. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I just had a question.
Vice Chair Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was reading this, I meant to call court counsel before this meeting to ask what his opinion about this policy was. So if we could ask him, does he have any objection to this litigation settlement policy?
Without objection from the board, court counsel, Peter Kastenholz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and why would there be any objection? I drafted this, and I didn't use any other counties or WCA materials as reference. I just used my experience, some of them bad, in putting this together. And so there might be other bad experiences in the future where things aren't lined up right, and we learn from our mistakes, and if that's the case, we'll be coming back and addressing it. But sometimes they're very major financial issues for the county. Excuse me, pertussis. Excuse me. Anyway, certain major issues when dealing with litigation, and I want there to be a plan of attack as far as who can address it and why, and there aren't other people saying, well, who gave you the authority to do this? This is where it's at, and so if you have concerns about it, you want to be part of meetings where things are discussed, just share that. It's not an attempt to exclude anybody. It's just a kind of a master plan to deal with issues. Thank you.
Court counsel and court jester, Peter Kastenholz.
You should ask for a raise, right?
Any further discussion on the motion?
You don't get it.
Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes 16-1. And then on pages 173 to 174 is indeed that litigation settlement policy drafted by Mr. Kastenholz. On pages 175 through 180, we have HERC committee minutes. Highway Commission, pages 181 through 183. Parks and Forestry, pages 184 through 187. And on pages 188 through 201, we have the Powers Bluff Phase 1 concept development plans. Central Wisconsin State Fair, pages 202 through 204. McMillan Memorial Library Board of Trustees on pages 205 through 208. And South Central Library System Board of Trustees, pages 209 to 210. And that takes us to the end of the packet for this evening. Is there anything else that needs to come before this board? Supervisor Clendenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the Wisconsin Counties Association, and I'm going to say this is probably one of the better ones that they had, and I appreciate all that they had. I just wish we had a little more time in some of those workshops that we have. But anyway, it was good. And it was well attended by Wood County. I was glad to see that too. Thank you.
Supervisor Quinn.
Can I piggyback on that for a second? Yeah, I appreciate everybody who attended there. It was, I think, the largest turnout we've had at a county's conference, and that's because of the central location, the Dells. We also found out that when we went an hour and 15 minutes in sessions, it tended to be too long. We found out 45 minutes is too short. And we did find that out by all the comments we got back. So I guess the good part is it's going to be in the same place next year. It's going to be held at the Kalahari, so all the logistics are in place. It's a beautiful new facility down there. The sessions will be an hour long. I do appreciate everybody who attended, and I want to also mention that the CAP Days, the County Ambassadors Program, is the 29th down in Madison. And that's another program, if you have not been involved with it, I would highly recommend. Issues that we talked about earlier when we had all the participation from the public really happen in the state capitol. And when you get the opportunity to go down and meet those legislators and talk to them without an ask sometimes, your concerns resonate at a much greater level when you have something you really do want. So appreciate your time.
Anything else that needs to come before this board this evening? I think we can do it in German, vote by voice, because I have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion on the floor and second to adjourn. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you all. Have a good evening.